Hello, everyone, and welcome. I'm honored and delighted to welcome you all here today for Queer Newark, Our Voices, Our Histories. I'll tell you a little bit more about the genesis of this project shortly, but I'm delighted that we have two wonderful, eminent people here to welcome you all. We have Mayor Cory Booker, who will deliver the first welcome, and after that, Chancellor Stephen Diner. So let's welcome Mayor Booker.
Good morning. I felt the energy on the first time. That's pretty good. I am thrilled to stand before you today and feel this depth of gratitude to the Rutgers Newark for pulling our community together and recognizing that we in the collective are people of beauty, people of pride, people in struggle, and people on the path towards a greater, richer justice. This day looks incredible. I was looking through the program and feeling myself get a little taller to know that we are having these conversations, that we are exploring our history, and I hope recommitting ourselves to the difficult work that needs to be done. I am, and I was just talking over in the corner, still a little startled at how this community is still so powerfully intolerant. And when I say the community, I mean this larger urban space towards gay and lesbians, bisexuals, transgendered. I get a little frustrated when I see not the distant past, but the recent past. When I see things like a leader in the educational world ordering teachers to black out the pictures of two young children. When I see what happened to Sakia Gunn and the lack of outrage within our community, the lack of outrage within our state, the lack of outrage in our country and our nation. I see the quiet stories that I encounter from friends of young people being abused and beaten and bullied in their schools or in their homes. I get frustrated that I've been mayor for 5.5 years, and in a city this strong and this great, that I happen to be the first mayor to actually raise the pride flag, something that should have been done decades and decades ago. And so I'm glad we are pulling together today. I'm glad that we are engaging in what I'm told is the 10th time that we've done this. But my hope is that this will fortify our souls to continue the fight, because there's still so much to do. While individuals like the Kardashians tend to trivialize marriage, I'm a little outraged that we as a community cannot see that everyone can have the same right to have their marriages videotaped for TV and last as much as my bread in my fridge. I'm still frustrated that there is not enough safe spaces here in Newark for our children to be. So frustrated that we have ignorance that still controls us and undermines our ability to make advancements in our community in health issues, wellness issues. We have a lot of work to do. So today I want to say thank you to those people who are committed to it. I want you to know that I stand with you. I am a part of this community in spirit and in love, and I will continue to do everything I can from my position to make advancements, even if it's just being a conscientious objector. As a mayor, I have chosen not to marry anybody, even though I have the power to do that. I will not marry anybody until I can marry everybody. My mom gets upset with me, as I say time and time again. My mom gets upset with me, as I've said before. She says, Cory, I just want you to marry one person. I appreciate the fact that you will not marry until there's marriage equality, but just marry one person, please. So we are going to continue the fight. And I know, as tough and as challenging as our history is, it is a history of strength, it is a history of perseverance, and I believe that our future will be a time where we can look our children in the eyes and not say it gets better, but we can look at our children in the eye and say it is better. It is better. Thank you.
Good morning. Yes. I've been Chancellor of Rutgers-Newark for nearly 10 years, and one of the first things I learned, not quite first, but early on, is never speak after Cory Booker, because Cory is so eloquent that I'm going to sound bumbling. But nonetheless, that's the way it worked out. So I'm really thrilled to be here. And I must say, in my job, 30 times a week, maybe, or 20 times a week, I get to greet conferences on subjects like left-handed tennis or right-handed golf or, things I know nothing about. And I usually begin with my standard speech about, let me tell you about Rutgers-Newark. And I also add, I know you don't want to hear this, but it's the paid ad from the commercial sponsor. This morning, I'm going to talk about that speech, but it actually ties in beautifully, centrally, to what we're doing today. There are two things that are particularly distinctive, I think, about Rutgers-Newark. One is our diversity. U.S. News & World Report, those of you who don't know this, has ranked colleges and universities across the country for 15 years on their racial and ethnic diversity. And for all 15 years, U.S. News has ranked Rutgers-Newark #1 among doctoral granting universities in the country. And we're very proud about that, and I must have said that 20,000 times since I've been in this job, if not more. However, because of that, we were chosen as the case study for a group of higher education leaders across the country who were spending a year in a leadership development program. And that program involved a kind of curriculum, and the curriculum had never studied a real institution. And that program just came to me and said, can we study you, the real institution, because you represent diversity so dramatically in such an important issue in higher education? And I said, sure, and they came and they studied us. And they then gave us their reports. And one of the things they said was, you have extraordinary racial, ethnic, religious diversity. You talk about that, you do professional development around it, but what about other forms of diversity? You're not talking about LGBT, you're not talking about veterans, you're not talking about older adults. All of these are elements of diversity. And in fact, we had done a few things, but not much up to that point, and that really woke us up. And we established the Office of, I forget the exact name, but yes, diversity support. Thanks primarily to the extraordinary leadership of Professor Beryl, who actually on my first day came to me and suggested we do a reception. And since then, I think we have embraced this issue very, very substantially. And I'm being candid. We were thinking of diversity strictly in racial, ethnic, and religious terms. And now we're thinking about it much more broadly. And as we should. And so, as I said, my first point I always make to people is we're the most diverse campus, but in this context, I'm especially happy to see this program because it's an extension of our commitment to a broader definition of diversity. The other thing that I always talk about is how Rutgers-Newark is an urban university and a university in Newark and deeply connected to Newark. And what does that mean? Well, that means not only that we do service to the community, it means that Newark provides an extraordinary rich array of opportunities for teaching, learning, and research. And we have a community involvement program that, community-based learning program that gives grants to faculty to design courses that take students into the community. And we have given some modest grants to faculty to do research on Newark. This project, again, which Beryl has organized, is just a superb example, and I've been going around every place telling people about isn't this wonderful. We know almost nothing about the LGBT or queer history of Newark. It is a rich subject, it's profoundly important, and I am just so thrilled that this conference is taking place today and that the conference is just the beginning of an ongoing oral history project that will really enlighten us. So it is Exhibit A of what it means to be an urban university. Take advantage of where you are, build around the extraordinary learning opportunities, assets that we have here, And that is exactly what Beryl Satter has done. So I have to be at a wedding in Washington, D.C., so I'm going to leave in a few minutes, but that leaving shouldn't suggest that I wouldn't otherwise stay. I really wish I could hear all this. I know it'll be recorded, and I will catch up on it. But all of you, thank you so much for coming, and Beryl, thank you for your extraordinary leadership.
I'm going to be very brief. I just wanted to add a little bit about the history of this historic day. Today, November 12th, is a historic day, and it's a day to begin the public celebration of queer Newark. And I just want to tell you a little bit about how we got here. I've been given a lot of credit, but I don't deserve really, because much of this came from writer, scholar, and Newark activist Darnell Moore, who about 2 years ago or so said to me, you know, we live in this city, and it's such an amazing city, and there's so many fabulous, brilliant activists in the city, and their stories have not been recorded, and they have not been celebrated as they should be. And he said, somehow we should put together some kind of interview project to get these people's amazing lives on the record. So it was his idea, and we kind of talked about it on and off, and then about 9 months ago, the chance to make this happen came when Clement Price of the Institute on Ethnicity, Culture, and the Modern Experience said, you know, I would like our institute to do a program dealing with LGBT Newark. And at the same time, there was artist and LGBT activist Pandora Scooter said, you know, I'd love to do something about LGBT Newark. So that came together. Darnell, Pandora, and I decided to brainstorm a little about what kind of program this could be. And we came up with this idea of a joint Rutgers Newark and Queer Newark celebration. And the idea was that we, the university, would not plan an event and then invite the community to come. Instead, we, the conference planners, would listen to queer Newark activists' ideas about what sort of conference they would most like to see. And then we would work together with them to make that vision come true. So this was our process. Darnell called a meeting together in June of 2001. Many people here were there. About 15 amazing activists and artists from Newark attended, and myself and Timothy Stewart Winter were the only Rutgers Newark people. So Rutgers Newark really, you know, we were the minority here. But they came together, and we went around the room, and the energy in the room was amazing and fabulous. And people just talked about their ideas about what they wanted to see happen. And together, those people in that room, many of whom will be up on the today, telling you their stories, shaped today's event. And they made the following points. First, they said the city of Newark, in fact, has a history of both brutality against LGBT people and immense courage, immense creativity, immense political activism among queer Newark residents. Second, that this complex and powerful history needs to be shared and preserved. Third, that this mission is especially important since AIDS wiped out a whole generation and left the next generation of queer youth with few people to turn to for guidance and mentoring. Finally, that the preservation of this history is immensely important as a resource, not only for queer Newark residents, but for all Newark residents, for historians, for artists, for activists of all sorts, locally, nationally, and internationally, and especially for the queer youth of Newark, to whom this is actually dedicated. So building on these important insights, we spent the next several months working together, holding meetings about every 2 weeks to create the conference you will see today, in which 3 generations of queer Newark residents will share their stories with each other and with other generations, and in which the art, culture, and creativity of queer Newark will be celebrated and preserved. So this is not only a celebration, it's a historic event in its own right. It's also the larger, this is the beginning of this is the public launch of a project that has already begun, another community university partnership, the Queer Newark Oral History Project. This project is dedicated to collecting and preserving the voices and histories of Newark's LGBT community and all its beauty, all its power, and all its diversity. And this has begun. Liberation and Truth and HMI are center places for it at the moment with support from Rutgers-Newark as much as we can. I'd like Maren Greathouse to stand up. She's, let's give her a hand. Maren Greathouse has a recent arrival in Newark. She was hired recently to head our new LGBTQ and Diversity Center. She's a brilliant activist, a wonderful person, fabulously energetic, a visionary, and she will be helping to coordinate the Queer Newark Oral History Project, which is a complicated and ambitious endeavor, but I know we can do it, and we are doing it, and it's already been amazing. So thank you, and welcome to Queer Newark, Our Voices, Our Histories. And the first thing you will see is a beautiful slideshow by a brilliant and talented Newark artist, Tamara Fleming, which will show you the faces of Queer Newark's activists and leaders and community members.
Hi, good morning, everyone. I hope you really enjoyed this presentation. It was amazing to work with so many dynamic people. I've only touched the surface. It was just 4 years ago that my firm, who I co-founded with Kimberly Williams, decided to move to Newark to make a difference, to bring some light. We knew that it was very important for people to start addressing the LGBT community, people of color, women, especially in these urban communities. And so my heart is open and full. I'm so happy and excited. This is only just the surface. There's so many other dynamic people that have been amazing. So you saw their faces and you saw the quotes, and this is the instructions for moving forward, I feel. If you're a young person, listen and look and see what our elders have said before us. It's a perfect guide to moving forward. Thank you so very much.
It's underneath, so that's okay. Push it in further. That's great.
I think we can spread out a little bit.
But we're going to mix you up once you get up.
How are you?
What name am I?
Nataly Masisonet. Spread out.
Yeah.
Good morning.
Good morning.
How are you?
Hi.
Good morning.
Good to see you.
Good to see you. Good.
Good morning. How are you? Good. Are we mic'd?
I think we are.
Okay.
Okay, turn this on.
Okay. Can you hear us? Good morning, everybody. Okay, so I have the wonderful task of moderating and sitting with this panel here. And in a sec, I'll say names and do introductions. But I also want to say a bit about what we're intending to do in this conversation. And I'm going to just ask questions, and each panelist will take about 3 to 5 minutes to give responses, and hopefully we can have a good conversation. So I should just take a deep breath. I just had the commute from Hades. And I literally just ran through the door and have been running for about 2 hours now. And every train that I got to, literally like this, nothing would be running. But I thought it was a wonderful metaphor for what it might mean to be queer. I honestly had to stop and say, this is what it feels like. We hit barriers, but we find ways to overcome them. So here I am with this wonderful panel. Can we clap for making it this morning? So I'm sitting with some wonderful folk, and we have bios that are inside your program, so I won't read through them all. but I will just say names and say a bit about the folk that you'll be hearing from. So I'm just going to use first names because it's going to be an intimate conversation. Next to me is Peter. Peter is a long time, if not lifetime, resident of Newark, New Jersey, and is a professor at Seton Hall. Next to Peter is Marge, or Margaret. Marge is also a longtime resident here of Newark and one of the bastions in the community. Next to Marge is James Credle, who many of us refer to as Mother Credle. A steward in the community, has been a longtime employee of Rutgers University and a longtime activist in the community. And next to James is the wonderful Nataly. Nataly is also a longtime resident of Newark, New Jersey, and a wonderful advocate and activist in our community. So let's jump in. And I have to see, these are my elders, and we often have really good conversations that can last for hours. Fortunately, time is not necessarily our friend today. So each response will have about 3 to 5 minutes for each. Is that okay? I'm interested in hearing about your teenage years, your childhood, wherever you were. Can you say a bit about that? Who were you? Where were you? And I guess we can start here.
Okay, so I actually grew up very close to here, just a few blocks away in what was once the Italian section of Newark. My family came here at the turn of the 19th to the 20th century. A little later in life, I lived further up in North Newark, where there was also a large Italian-American community. I went to both the public school and parochial schools here in Newark. I'm a product of the 1960s in many ways. So participated in many of the, social movements of that period, long before there was a gay liberation movement, as it was first called very early on. I have never been able to describe my childhood in Newark as anything other than brutal, violent, and menacing, unfortunately. I spent most of my time being hunted down by hostile people who hated everything about me. And I moved around from one school to the next because everywhere that I went, I was menaced and the victim of violence in one form or another, not only by fellow students, but by teachers at a time when it was totally acceptable for a teacher to openly ridicule and make fun of and humiliate students for exhibiting any kind of difference, not just difference around sexual orientation or I can tell you one story that comes to my mind actually about an experience with my own mother, which probably reflects it all. She told me once when I was around 12 or 13 years old, she was extremely worried about me, that there was something deeply wrong with me. I thought she was referring to my sexuality, which she was indirectly. And so I said, "What is it? What's wrong with me?" And she said, "You're weird. You read books. Only weird people read books." Right? I found my solace in a world of books and music. It became what soothed me from the violence that I experienced.
Thank you.
I guess I give lie to the fact that not all African Americans come either from the rural South or from urban areas. I grew up in the heartland, in northwestern Pennsylvania. Folk from northwestern PA don't think of it as the heartland, but it is solidly Middle West, with Middle Western attitudes. So I grew up a tomboy in a family of 5. I had 2 brothers and my parents. I guess because we didn't know about the Huxtables at the time, I had a ward in June Cleaver upbringing and family. It wasn't until I went to college that I realized that we were poor. My parents had middle-class aspirations, and they certainly had those aspirations for my brother and myself. My father didn't graduate high school. My mother finished high school. In terms of sexuality, I was a tomboy, nothing more or less. And because everybody in my little small town of about 16,000 people ran around and had fun and could stay out until 9 o'clock at night, nobody thought anything about a girl who liked to climb trees and play with the guys and, and catch tadpoles in the stream in the cemetery where we weren't supposed to be. I didn't date really when I was in high school. Part of it was probably because I was a fat kid, and guys don't particularly like fat girls, so they didn't look at me. And it wasn't until I realized my sexual preference that I realized I was fortunate that they didn't look at me, because I didn't have to go through the motions of acting like this is what I really wanted to do. I went to my high school prom because I was my mother's only daughter, and you have to go to your high school prom. It was one of the most horrific experiences in my life. So I don't like dresses, and I had a prom dress on and makeup and was extremely, extremely uncomfortable. I went to college in South Central Pennsylvania at an all-women's college. But I hadn't recognized my sexual identity at the time. So I'm in heaven and not knowing it, just not taking advantage of the fact that I'm surrounded by 699 other women, some of whom were lesbian, though we obviously, no one was out, whether some of the women really realized who they were or not. Back in 1965, when I started college, you certainly didn't talk about liking women and preferring to be with women. So I guess in terms of my early activism, it was really around social justice. And that was activism around race and class and power, and not really sexual identity.
Thanks.
Well, my story is obviously much different. I grew up in the Jim Crow South, in a little small town in North Carolina. Family of 14 children, poor, but the people down the street were poor. At a very early age, before I was 10, I realized that I was different. I didn't know what that meant, except that I was more interested in the boys than